Peter Parker was already moving when the sky broke. He was in the middle of a swing, one hand on his web line, the other reaching for the next anchor point. The city below him was loud. Sirens, people shouting. A normal night for him. Then the air in front of him tore open like a cracked window. It was not a doorway. It was worse. It was a jagged rip full of pale light and spinning shadows, like the world behind it was turning the wrong way. Peter's spider sense screamed so hard it felt like a fire alarm inside his skull. "Nope," Peter said out loud, because saying it made him feel like he had some control. He tried to cut the web line. He twisted his body to miss it. He even fired a new web to slingshot away. The rip pulled anyway. It yanked him forward like a giant hand. Wind slammed into him. The lights of his city stretched into bright streaks. For half a second, he saw nothing but white. Then gravity returned. He dropped. He hit something hard and flat, rolled, and landed in a crouch out of habit. His palms stung through his gloves. His knees bent, ready to spring again. His heart was hammering. He looked up. Big screens, loud music, spotlights sweeping the sky. A crowd packed shoulder to shoulder, all holding phones high like tiny glowing bricks. A giant logo was everywhere, on banners, on balloons, on the screens. Vought. Peter had no idea what that was, but it looked like a company that really, really loved itself. Then he heard metal scream. Above the crowd, a massive stage rig was tilting. A steel beam snapped loose. A screen the size of a building started to fall. People screamed. The front rows shoved back. The pressure spread like a wave. Someone tripped, and then it was 10 people, and then it was a pile. Peter didn't think. He moved. He fired webbing at the falling screen, but it was too heavy to stop. So he changed the problem. He webbed the screen to 2 nearby towers, then to a third, making a web net so the screen would swing instead of crash straight down. The weight dragged the tower's attached banners down. The net strained. The screen dropped anyway, but slower, sliding into the web like a giant piece of trash caught in a spider web. It still would have crushed people. Peter swung under it and kicked off a pole, shooting 2 more webs to tighten the net. The screen jerked, stopped, and hung there, shaking, just a few feet above the crowd. The crowd went silent for a split second. Then chaos came back twice as loud. "Okay," Peter shouted, voice muffled by his mask. "Everyone take 3 steps back, not 10. 3. No stampede. Nobody wins a stampede." He vaulted into the crowd. He didn't shove. He didn't yell at one person. He moved like a pinball, bouncing from spot to spot, pulling people up by their shoulders, guiding them out of the pile, webbing the ground lightly so feet wouldn't slip. A little kid was pinned under an adult who couldn't get up. Peter lifted the adult like he weighed nothing and set him down gently. The kid's eyes were wide. "You're good," Peter said. "You're totally good. Stay with your grown-up. Or a grown-up. Any grown-up you trust." He heard another crack. The rig was still failing. Peter shot a web up, stuck himself to a support beam, and crawled upside down like it was normal. He pulled a dangling cable out of the way before it whipped down. He webbed a loose light so it wouldn't fall. Below him, people stared up. Phones kept filming. Peter's spider sense kept buzzing. Not just danger. Attention. Too many eyes. Too many cameras. He hated that. A figure rose on a small platform near the stage, surrounded by security. A young woman in a bright costume, white and gold, hair shining under lights, stared at Peter like she couldn't decide if she was impressed or scared. Starlight. Peter didn't know her name, but he saw the look. It was the look of someone who had seen a real rescue and didn't know where it fit in her world. Then the sky above the towers flashed. A shadow dropped out of the lights like a falling star that chose to stop. A man hovered in the air, cape hanging perfectly, smile perfect, eyes bright in a way that felt wrong. He floated down slowly, like he wanted every phone to catch the angle. The crowd cheered like they had practiced it. Peter's spider sense flared again, sharper than before. Not a thing is falling, Danger. This was, Predator just noticed you. Danger. The man landed and looked up at Peter on the rig with a calm face that didn't match his eyes. He spoke softly. The crowd couldn't hear over the music and shouting, but Peter could, because Danger made him listen harder. You weren't on my list, the man said. Who sent you? Peter swallowed under the mask. He had no idea where he was, and he had a very bad feeling he had landed in the wrong kind of world. Annie January stood on the edge of the stage platform and tried not to show how tense she was. The crowd was still buzzing. Security was still yelling into earpieces. PR people were already pointing at screens, already planning what words would go on the news in the next 10 minutes. But Annie could only see the masked kid. He was fast. Not trained fast. Not camera fast. Real fast. He had moved like saving lives was the only thing that mattered. He didn't pause to pose. He didn't look for angles. He didn't wait for orders. He just did it. And now Homelander had shown up. Annie's stomach tightened. Homelander's smile was on, but Annie knew what that meant. It meant he wanted control. It meant he was deciding if the kid was a toy or a threat. Homelander tilted his head up at the rig. Hey, he called louder now, for the cameras. Great work up there. Why don't you come down and let's make sure everyone's safe, okay? The masked kid looked down at the crowd first, not at Homelander. Annie noticed that. He checked the hanging screen, checked the shaking cables, checked the people. Then he hopped down in one smooth drop, landing in a crouch like it was a signature move. Annie heard people gasp, like it was a magic trick. The kid straightened and lifted his hands a little, palms open. Peaceful, like he didn't want to fight, like he wanted to talk. Homelander stepped in close, too close, in a way that looked friendly on camera and felt like a warning in real life. Annie couldn't hear what Homelander said next, not over the crowd, but she saw the kid's shoulders tighten, and she saw the tiny shift of his head, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. That scared her more than the webs, because it meant he had senses she didn't understand. Vought loved things it could understand, things it could brand, things it could control. This kid did not look controllable. Annie glanced at the nearest camera operator. Cut to the crowd, she said quickly, smiling like it was a normal suggestion. Get the happy faces. The operator hesitated. Then Homelander laughed loud and put an arm around the kid's shoulders like they were teammates. The crowd screamed. Annie forced her smile to stay in place. Inside, her thoughts were simple and sharp. Please don't hurt him. Please don't make him hurt anyone. Stan Edgar watched the video 3 times without blinking. He did not watch like a fan. He watched like a man reading a contract. The first view was for the crowd. The second view was for the speed. The third view was for the details. Webbing. White. Strong. Fired from the wrists. Not a standard Vought gadget. Movement. Efficient. No wasted motion. No obvious training tells. Strength. He lifted a grown man with one arm and did not strain. And the mask. Full face. Total anonymity. That was either a childish choice or a calculated one. Stan turned slightly. Confirmed that he is not in our registry. A scientist in a white coat swallowed. We ran facial models and body type matches. Nothing. He is not one of ours. And the material? Stan asked. We recovered strands, the scientist said. It's not like any polymer we have. It's organic, but it's also engineered. It behaves like a high-grade adhesive fiber with elastic control. We don't understand how it's produced. Stan held his gaze on the screen where the kid had built a net in seconds. So he brings his own supply, Stan said, and he uses it with discipline. Yes, the scientist said. Also, his movement suggests a predictive response, like he knows where danger will be before it happens. Stan nodded once, as if someone had told him the weather. Prepare options, Stan said. Recruitment, containment, reputation management. And Homelander? A PR executive asked carefully. Stan's eyes stayed on the screen. Homelander will do what he always does, Stan said. He will make it personal. Peter found a rooftop 2 blocks away and breathed, like his lungs had forgotten how. His suit was scuffed. His shoulder hurt where the landing had hit too hard. And under his mask, sweat ran down his face. He crouched by a vent and listened. The city sounded wrong, not in the normal new place way, in a deeper way. The sirens were there, but they were fewer than he expected for a crowd crush and collapsing rig. The police radios he could faintly hear sounded slow, like they were waiting for permission. Then there was the other noise, the giant screens. They were already replaying footage of the rescue, already adding bright graphics and words like hero and new friend. Peter groaned quietly. Oh, come on. He pulled his mask up just enough to wipe his face, then pulled it back down fast. He didn't know how many cameras were on rooftops. He checked his web shooters by feel. The cartridges were not full. He had used more than he liked. He didn't know where he was going to get chemicals to refill them. And he definitely did not know where he was going to sleep. He had slept in weird places before. Once under a bridge in a storm, once in a half-built apartment building. But that was in his own city, with his own streets, where he knew the safe corners. Here, he felt watched. His spider sense wasn't screaming now, but it was never quiet. It was like a low hum, like the world itself was on edge. He looked down at the street. A billboard showed the flying man's face, smiling, perfect teeth, perfect hair. Words flashed under him. America's hero. Peter remembered the man's eyes at the stage, the way the smile didn't match. Peter did not like him. Peter also knew a simple truth. If he had landed in a new world, there would still be people who needed help. He couldn't stop himself. He fired a web and swung into the night. Huey Campbell was holding a cheap takeout box when the video popped up on his phone. He wasn't hungry anymore. He wasn't anything anymore, except wide-eyed. On screen, a masked guy in red and blue moved through a crowd like a blur. He caught falling metal. He pulled people up. He stuck to a wall like it was normal. Huey replayed the part where the guy lifted a full-grown man with one arm and set him down gently, like he cared if the guy got hurt. That was the part that felt unreal. "Oi," Butcher said from the couch, not looking up. "Stop gawking." Huey held the phone out. "You need to see this." Butcher took it, watched 10 seconds, and his face changed the way it always did when a new problem walked in the door. He didn't look impressed. He looked annoyed. "That's new," said, leaning in. Frenchie's eyes narrowed with interest, like someone had just shown him a strange tool. "The boy moves like a dancer," he murmured, "but with purpose." Kimiko watched without expression, but her head tilted slightly at the rescue parts. Butcher paused the video on the flying man, Homelander, standing too close to the masked guy. "Vought didn't make this one," Butcher said. Huey blinked. "How can you tell?" Butcher jabbed the screen where the masked guy was pulling a kid out of a pile. "Look at him. Not looking at the camera, not selling it. He's working." "But he's a soup," Huey said, voice small. "Maybe," Butcher said. "Maybe not. Either way, Vought will want him. And if Vought wants him, we need to know why." Crossed his arms. "We don't rush in," he said. "We watch first." Butcher's smile was thin. "We watch," he agreed. "And we plan." Huey looked back at the paused frame, the mask, the webs, the way the guy's body leaned toward danger instead of away from it. For the first time in a while, Huey felt a weird spark of something he hadn't felt here. Hope. It scared him. Peter spent the next hour doing what he always did. He followed the worst sounds. A scream in an alley, glass breaking, a car horn stuck down like someone had passed out on it. He moved fast, but he didn't show off. He stayed high, out of sight, swinging between buildings where the shadows were deep. The first crime was small. 2 men were trying to rip a purse from an older woman near a corner store. Peter dropped behind them like a falling leaf, quiet until the last second. He webbed both of their hands to the purse strap, then webbed the strap to a street sign. The men yanked. The sign didn't move. They stared at their stuck hands, confused. Peter leaned in from upside down on the wall, mask inches from their faces. "Hey," he said, cheerful. "So, quick question. What if we didn't do that?" One of the men screamed and tried to punch him. Peter moved his head half an inch, and the fist missed by a mile. He flicked a web that stuck the guy's mouth shut. The other man's eyes went wide. Peter sighed. Okay, he said. "Look, nobody has to get hurt. Just stop." He stepped forward, grabbed both men by the backs of their jackets, and lifted them slightly off the ground. Not enough to scare them into panic, just enough to make a point. Then his spider sense buzzed, sharper. Not from the 2 thieves, from above. Peter's head snapped up. A person was watching from a rooftop across the street. Not filming, just watching. The watcher didn't move like a civilian. Their posture was too steady, too ready. Peter dropped the thieves onto the sidewalk like bags of laundry and shot a web to the roofline. In a second, he was on the opposite roof. But the watcher was already gone. Peter stood there, chest rising and falling, scanning the dark. His spider sense calmed. But he didn't. He didn't like being hunted. He also didn't like what he saw next. A police car rolled slowly into the street below. 2 officers stepped out, looked at the webbed thieves, and looked up at the buildings like they expected someone else. One officer spoke into a radio. "We got 2 restrained," he said. "No sign of the, masked subject." The other officer didn't sound grateful. He sounded irritated. "Should we even book them?" the second officer muttered. "If vote's coming, we wait." Peter's mouth went dry under the mask. Wait for vote? Since when did a company handle street crime? Peter backed into the shadow and moved away. Quiet. Fast. He needed answers. And the first step to answers was not getting caught. The next morning, Vote invited the world to feel safe again. They called it a unity event, a public show of strength, a celebration of heroes, a promise that everything was under control. They set it in a wide open plaza with good sight lines and perfect camera placement. There were barriers to shape crowd movement. There were medics on standby. There were drones in the air. It looked responsible. It also looked planned like a movie. Peter watched from a high ledge, arms wrapped around his knees, trying to decide how much he hated this. He had stayed awake all night. He had found a half-empty rooftop maintenance room to sit in for 10 minutes. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the rip in the sky again. He saw the falling screen. He heard the crowd scream. He also kept thinking about his web shooters. He checked them again. The cartridges were lower. He was going to run out in this world, and he didn't know if he could rebuild them with whatever chemistry lab supplies existed here. He could improvise, but he needed time. He needed a safe place. He looked down at the plaza. A familiar glow caught his eye. The woman in white and gold was there again. She wasn't waving to the crowd right now. She was standing near the edge of the stage, shoulders tense, scanning rooftops like she was looking for someone. Peter's spider sense didn't warn him about her. That mattered. Peter hesitated. Then, from somewhere behind him, a calm voice spoke. "You're not very good at staying hidden," the voice said. Peter spun. The woman, Starlight, stood on the roof a few feet away, hands visible, not in a fighting stance. She didn't smile like she was selling something. She looked tired. Peter's body stayed coiled, ready to move. "I'm better than I look," he said. "I believe that," she said. "I saw what you did." Peter watched her eyes. He watched her hands. He watched the way she held her weight. Not a threat. Not right now. "Who are you?" she asked. "Really?" Peter didn't answer that. Not with his name. Not with anything that could be used later. "I'm lost," he said instead. Her face softened a little. "Yeah," she said quietly. "That makes two of us." Peter blinked. That was not what he expected. Before he could respond, a sharp buzzing hit his spider sense again. Not danger from Starlight. Danger from the event. Something was about to go wrong. Peter stepped to the ledge and looked down. A Vought security truck was backing into the plaza. Men were unloading equipment. A large metal container rolled down a ramp. The container hit a bump. The lock snapped. The door swung open. And something inside moved. It wasn't a person walking out calmly. It was a shape that slammed into the door from the inside, like it wanted out now. Peter's spine went cold. Starlight saw it too. Her jaw tightened. "This wasn't on the schedule," she whispered. The metal door burst outward. A man stumbled out, barefoot in a torn jumpsuit, wrists marked like he had been restrained. His eyes were wild. His skin looked gray with exhaustion. Veins stood out on his neck like ropes. He looked at the crowd and made a broken sound, half sob, half laugh. Then the ground around his feet cracked. A shockwave punched outward. People screamed and fell. The stage lights shattered. Peter didn't wait. He leapt. He shot webbing down in thick lines, making quick handholds for people to grab, guiding them away from the center. "Move!" he called. "Back! Away from the middle!" Starlight jumped after him, light building in her hands. Her blast hit the ground near the wild man, not to kill him, but to push him off balance and stop him from charging into the crowd. The man roared and swung his arms. A chunk of broken pavement tore free and flew like a cannonball. Peter webbed it midair and yanked it off course. The chunk slammed into a Vought statue instead of a family. A child screamed. Peter snapped his wrist and webbed the kid's backpack, pulling him towards safety like a fast little tug. He didn't even look where he was pulling. His spider sense told him the path was clear. He heard Starlight yelling at security. "Get them out!" she shouted. "Now!" But security didn't move like people trying to save lives. They moved like people waiting for a cue. Peter saw a man in a suit behind the stage, speaking into an earpiece, eyes on a camera monitor. Rage flared hot in Peter's chest. This was staged, or it was supposed to be, and now it was real. The wild man lunged at the crowd again, faster than a normal person should move. Peter met him head-on. He didn't punch first. He webbed the man's feet to the ground and webbed his wrists together, trying to restrain him without breaking bones. The man tore the webbing like it was string. Peter's eyes widened under his mask. "Okay," Peter muttered. "That's new." He ducked a swing that would have taken his head off. His spider sense screamed, and he rolled, feeling the air move where the fist passed. Starlight hit the man with a bright blast that made him stagger. Peter used that half-second to jump onto the man's back and web his face, trying to blind him without suffocating him. The man screamed and clawed at the webbing. Behind them, the crowd surged. Peter's mind split into two tracks the way it always did in a crisis. Track 1, stop the threat. Track 2, save the people. Track 2 always won. He fired web lines across the plaza, anchoring them to poles and buildings, creating soft barriers to slow the crowd from crushing itself. He webbed a fallen barrier gate upright so people wouldn't trip. He pulled a woman out from under a toppled speaker. Starlight kept blasting. trying to push the wild man away from civilians. And then the air changed. It felt like the temperature dropped, like a storm cloud moved in, even though the sky was blue. The crowd screaming shifted into cheering. Peter looked up. Homelander floated above the plaza, perfectly framed by cameras. He smiled wide. "Everyone stay calm," Homelander boomed, voice smooth and huge. "I'm here." Peter's spider sense went from buzzing to screaming. Homelander dropped down fast, like a missile choosing not to explode. He landed between Peter and the wild man, cape barely moving, eyes fixed on Peter first. Not the threat. Peter felt his stomach twist. Homelander glanced at the wild man like he was a messy prop. Then he looked back at Peter and smiled like they were friends. "You again?" Homelander said, loud enough for microphones. "Looks like you found yourself a front row seat." Peter kept his body loose, ready to move. "People are getting hurt," he said. "Help me clear the crowd." Homelander's smile didn't change. "I am helping," he said. Then, without warning, he shot forward. Not at the wild man, at Peter. Peter's spider sense saved him by a hair. He jumped backward, but Homelander's hand still clipped his shoulder. Pain flashed down Peter's arm like electricity. He flew into a broken stage support and dented it. The crowd gasped. Cameras zoomed in. Peter pushed off the metal and landed on his feet. He didn't fall. He didn't panic. But inside, his brain was already calculating. That hit was heavy. Way heavier than anything he had taken from most people. Homelander hovered closer, low, like he wanted the cameras to see his face. "Easy," Homelander said, still smiling. "Don't make this weird." Peter's voice stayed steady. "I'm not the problem," he said. "That guy is out of control." Homelander tilted his head. "He's handled," he said, like it was a promise. "You, though, you're not cleared." The wild man roared and charged again, slamming into Homelander's side. Homelander didn't move. He didn't even look at the wild man at first. He looked at Peter, as if to say, "See?" Then Homelander backhanded the wild man so hard the man skidded across the plaza like a thrown doll, smashing through a row of empty chairs. Peter's jaw clenched. That would have killed a normal person. The wild man groaned and tried to rise anyway. Starlight stared, shock on her face, then anger. She stepped closer, light flaring in her palms. "Homelander," she said sharply, not playing for cameras now. "Stop showboating. People are—" Homelander's eyes flicked toward her for a fraction of a second. The air around him felt sharper. Then his eyes returned to Peter. "You know what I think?" Homelander said, voice still friendly to the crowd. "I think you're scared." Peter almost laughed. He was scared, yes, but not the way Homelander meant. Peter was scared for the people behind him. He shot a web at a falling light rig that had finally snapped loose. The web caught it, and Peter yanked it sideways so it crashed into an empty area instead of into a crowd pocket. That small move saved lives. It also made Homelander's smile twitch. Homelander moved again, faster than the crowd could follow, trying to grab Peter and hold him up like a trophy. Peter's spider sense screamed. He twisted in midair, slipping the grab, and fired webbing straight at Homelander's face. The web hit Homelander's eyes. For a normal person, it would have been lights out. For Homelander, it was an insult. He tore it away like it was nothing. But it bought Peter half a second. Peter used that half second to swing high, away from the crowd, pulling the fight toward the top of a tall screen tower. Homelander followed, flying with effortless control. They hit the tower's side and clung there in two different ways. Homelander hovering inches from the wall, Peter stuck to it like a gecko. Peter's brain raced. He couldn't outmuscle this guy. He could feel it already. He needed to do what he always did against bigger power. He needed to control space, control timing, protect civilians. Homelander's eyes glowed red. Peter's spider sense screamed so hard it hurt. Peter flipped over the edge of the tower, just as heat vision sliced through the air where his head had been. The beam carved a glowing line into the metal. Peter fired webs in a wide fan, not at Homelander's body, but at the tower's support beams and the big screen itself. Homelander blinked, annoyed as the webbing spread. Peter yanked. The giant screen tilted, threatening to fall. Homelander's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Not fear, but calculation. If that screen fell, it would crush hundreds. Peter had forced a choice. Homelander shot forward and caught the screen with one hand, stopping it from dropping. The crowd cheered. Homelander smiled again, because now he looked like the savior. Peter didn't feel like cheering. He used the moment to swing back down toward the plaza, toward the wild man and the crowd, because that was still the real problem. Starlight met him halfway, landing hard, eyes bright. "You're not with them," she said, breathless. Peter didn't answer with words. He answered by webbing a falling pole and holding it steady while Starlight guided people around it. The wild man surged again, aiming for the densest part of the crowd like he wanted maximum damage. Peter sprinted straight at him, feet sticking to broken concrete, and hit him with a full-body tackle. Peter's strength was real. He could lift cars. He could bend steel. He could punch through heavy doors. But the wild man was not normal either. They slammed together and rolled. Peter heard ribs creak, maybe the man's, maybe his own. He didn't have time to check. He webbed the man's arms, webbed his chest to the ground, webbed his legs in a tight lattice. The man screamed and tore at it. Peter leaned in close, mask inches from the man's face. "Hey," Peter said, voice low, almost gentle. "I'm trying to help you, but you have to stop." The man's eyes focused for a second, just a second. And in that second, Peter saw something underneath the rage. Fear. Then Homelander landed behind Peter, boots cracking the ground. Peter's spider sense warned him, loud and clear. Danger. Behind. Now. Peter spun. Homelander stood there with the perfect hero pose. The cameras loved it. Homelander's voice was warm. "Great teamwork," he said. "Now step aside. I'll finish." Peter's stomach dropped. Finish meant something in this world. Peter held his ground. "No," he said, calm but hard. "You're not killing him." Homelander's smile froze for the tiniest moment. Then it returned, brighter. He leaned in close, close enough that the crowd couldn't hear the next words, but Peter could. "You don't get to tell me no," Homelander whispered. Peter swallowed. His mind flashed through options. Fight? He could dodge. He could stall. He could run. But he couldn't let Homelander do whatever he wanted to a helpless person. Starlight stepped forward, light blazing in her hands. "Homelander," she warned. Homelander didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Peter. And then Peter did something that changed the whole scene. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't run. He fired webbing to a nearby camera tower and yanked it down, just enough to tilt it, so the camera lens pointed away from the wild man and toward the vault handlers behind the stage. A man in a suit jerked back, startled, earpiece visible. Another handler reached for a case marked with warning symbols. The crowd's phones caught it. Not perfectly, but enough. Homelander's head snapped toward the movement. For the first time, his face showed real anger, because Peter had moved the story. Peter used that instant to grab the wild man, still webbed, still struggling, and sling him toward an empty service area behind a barricade, away from civilians. He wasn't gentle. He couldn't be. But he aimed for safety. The wild man hit the ground and groaned, still alive. Peter landed between Homelander and the wild man, like a shield. "People first," Peter said. Homelander's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the cameras, to the crowd, to Starlight, whose hands were glowing like she was ready to fight her own teammate if she had to. Homelander made a choice, not the kind choice, the smart public choice. He forced his smile back onto his face and lifted his hands toward the crowd like a king waving. "Everyone's safe," he called. "Vought's got this under control." The crowd cheered again, confused, but eager to believe. Homelander leaned close to Peter one last time. His voice was soft, like a secret. "This city is mine," he said. "You don't swing in it without my permission." Then he stepped back, turned to the cameras, and posed. Peter stayed still, heart pounding. He knew what had just happened. Homelander didn't retreat because he couldn't win. He retreated because he couldn't win the way he wanted while everyone was watching. And that meant the next time would not be in front of cameras. The plaza slowly calmed as medics rushed in. Vought security finally moved, not to help first, but to close off angles and block phones. Starlight walked up beside Peter, breathing hard. Her voice was tight. "They're going to come for you," she said. Peter looked at the crowd, at the shaken families, at the broken stage, at the tilted cameras. He thought about the rip in the sky. He thought about going home. Then he thought about what would happen if he left this world right now. He made a quiet decision. "I know," he said, "but I'm not done." Far above them, a giant screen switched to a clean Vought graphic. A bright new headline appeared, already ready, already polished. "Welcome our new hero." Peter stared at it, exhausted and angry at the same time. In this world, even a rescue came with a price tag, and he had a feeling Vought was about to hand him the bill. The headline hit every screen before the broken stage was even cleaned up. "Mystery web hero saves hundreds. Vought welcomes him." Peter saw it on a billboard while he swung past. He saw it on a bus stop screen. He saw it on a phone in a stranger's hand. The same 10-second clip looped again and again. His web net catching the falling rig. His crouched landing. Homelander smiling beside him like they were old friends. Peter didn't feel like a friend. He felt like a target that hadn't been properly named yet. He kept moving. He stayed high. He stayed out of the bright parts of the city. But even the dark parts had cameras. His web shooters clicked when he checked them mid-swing. That sound was small, but it hit him hard. Low cartridges. No lab. No home base. No safe closet to change in. No place to sleep without one eye open. He landed on a rooftop water tank and crouched behind it. He pulled off one glove and flexed his fingers. They ached from catching steel and yanking heavy loads. He could take it. He always could. But the ache wasn't the problem. The problem was the feeling that the whole city was watching him like a show. Peter peered over the edge. Down on the street, a Vought truck rolled by with a giant smiling face on the side. Homelander. Perfect teeth. Perfect hair. Peter muttered, "I miss my problems that were smaller than flying dictators." His spider sense buzzed. Not a scream. A warning. Someone nearby, paying attention. Peter went still. A drone drifted along the edge of the roofline. Quiet. Expensive. It swept a camera eye over vents, doors, and shadows. Peter waited until it passed. Then he flicked his wrist. A thin strand of web snapped onto the drone's belly. He didn't yank it down. That would be loud. He just guided it gently into a roof antenna. The drone bumped, spun, and had to correct itself. Its camera shook for a second. Peter used that second to slip into the maintenance room doorway. Inside, it smelled like dust and hot metal. There was a mop bucket and a box of cheap tools. Peter shut the door softly and leaned his head against it. "Okay," he whispered. "Think." He needed 3 things: a safe spot, a way to refill web fluid, and information. He had a feeling the third one would be the hardest. A soft knock came at the door. Peter froze. Spider sense. Low hum, not a blast. He opened the door a crack. Starlight stood there in street clothes, hoodie up. No cameras, no crowd. Just tired eyes, and a face that didn't look like it was selling anything. Peter didn't lower his guard, but he didn't slam the door either. "You followed me?" he asked. "I found you," she corrected. "There's a difference." Peter studied her hands. Empty. No phone. No weapon that he could see. "I can't be seen talking to you," she said. "Not like this." "Then why are you?" Peter asked. Her jaw tightened. "Because you're real," she said. "And they're going to chew you up." Peter leaned back against the doorframe. "You mean the guy with the cape and the smile?" Starlight flinched at how easily he said it, like a person could name the problem and make it smaller. "You don't get it," she said. "Vought doesn't let things exist outside their story. If you don't join, they'll turn you into a villain." Peter exhaled slowly. "That's not new," he said, thinking of old headlines, old blame, old pain. "But it's never fun." Starlight stepped closer, voice low. "That guy you stopped? He didn't escape by accident. He was moved. He was pushed. This was supposed to be a clean show." Peter's stomach turned. "A show where people could die." She nodded, eyes hard. "They don't care about people. They care about control." Peter's spider sense buzzed again. Not danger. Pressure. Like time running out. "Why tell me?" he asked. "Because you're going to try to do the right thing anyway," she said. "And I want you to survive doing it." Peter held her gaze. He didn't know her. Not really. But he knew the look of someone trapped in a system they hated. "You have a name?" she asked. Peter hesitated. Then he shook his head. "Not for you," he said. "Not yet." She accepted that faster than he expected. "Fine," she said. "Then listen. Vought will invite you in. They'll act nice. They'll offer you a team, a suit upgrade, money, whatever you want." Peter almost laughed. "I want to go home." Starlight's eyes softened. "I figured," she said. "And they'll say they can help." Peter's voice went flat. "They can't. They might have information," she said. "They track everything. If you fell out of the sky, they'll want to know how. They'll be digging already." Peter's mind clicked into place. Information. Vought was the center of the spiderweb in this world. Starlight looked away for a second, like she hated what she was about to say. "Someone else will come for you too." "Homelander?" Peter asked. Her face tightened. "Not just him. There's a group," she said. "They hate soups. They kill soups. They might think you're the same." Peter's spider sense gave a light pulse at the word, kill. Starlight stepped back toward the roof door. "I can't stay. If you want to talk again, I'll leave you a sign." "A sign?" Peter echoed. She pointed at a vent pipe. 3 small light marks," she said. "Like stars. You'll see them if you're watching." Then she paused. "One more thing," she said quietly. Peter waited. "Don't let him get you alone," she said. And then she was gone, slipping away like a normal person, which somehow made it feel even more serious. Peter closed the door and stared at the mop bucket. 3 stars, he muttered. "Okay, I'm officially living in the weirdest scavenger hunt ever." His web shooters clicked again when he checked them. "Also, I'm going to run out of web fluid," he added, as if the bucket could answer. He found an old sink in the corner. Rusty. But it ran. Peter washed his hands, then looked at his reflection in a cracked mirror. A red mask stared back. In his world, the mask was protection. For him, and for the people he loved. Here, it felt like bait. He pulled the mask down for a second to breathe. His face looked pale and tired. He pulled it back up. "Okay," he told himself. "Rule 1, people first. Rule 2, don't let the flying psycho isolate you. Rule 3, he tapped his web shooter. Rule 3, Find a chemistry set before I become Spider Guy who throws rocks. Across the city, in a building that smelled like money, Stan Edgar watched the same clips again. Not the clips the public saw. His team had pulled every angle from every camera. They had slowed down frames until the masked figure became a map of motion. His strength? Stan asked. A scientist swallowed. He's far above normal, possibly above most of our mid-tier soups. But he doesn't fight like a brute. He fights like he's managing 10 problems at once. He is, Stan said calmly. Another executive leaned forward. Public reaction is extremely positive. He looks like a classic hero. The mask is good branding. Stan's eyes stayed on a frame where SpiderMan had yanked a falling pole away from civilians, not even looking. The mask is a problem, Stan said. A product must have a face. We can make him take it off, someone said. Stan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You will not make him do anything, Stan said. Not if we want him intact. He tapped a folder. First option, recruit. Offer resources. Offer protection. Offer a story. And if he refuses? The executive asked. Stan looked at the screen where SpiderMan had pointed a camera away from the staged angle and toward the handlers. Stan's face didn't change. Then we change the story, he said. Homelander stood in front of his mirror and smiled at himself. It was the same smile he gave the cameras. Wide, easy, warm. He practiced it until it felt perfect. Then he dropped it. His eyes looked flat, almost bored, except for the tight heat under them. He could still feel the web on his face. He could still feel the tiny moment where he had been forced to catch the screen because people were watching. He hated that. He hated being pushed into a choice. He turned his head slightly, listening. He could hear people talking through walls. Assistants, security, PR. He heard the name they were using. SpiderMan. Homelander tasted it like it was something rotten. A bug, he whispered. A little bug in my city. His phone buzzed. A message. Stan wants you to play nice. Homelander chuckled softly. He typed back. Sure. Then he whispered to the mirror. I'll play nice, until nobody's looking. Peter tried to patrol like normal. It didn't work. In his world, a police scanner helped him find trouble. In this world, the scanner felt like a lie. Sirens didn't always go where people were hurt. Sometimes they went where cameras were. So he listened the old way. With his ears. With his eyes. With his spider sense. He stopped a mugging behind a closed bar. He webbed the attacker to a wall and left him hanging like a warning sign. He pulled a driver out of a flipped car and held the roof up until the trapped passenger crawled free. He did not pose for a camera. He still ended up on 5 different feeds. Someone had filmed him from a window. Someone had filmed him from a parked car. Someone had filmed him from a drone that looked like a hobby toy but probably wasn't. The next morning, a new story ran. Web vigilante interferes in official rescue. Questions rise. Peter stared at the screen on a subway platform as he hung upside down from the roof beams above it. Interferes? He mouthed. With saving people? Then his spider sense warned him. Someone was watching the platform closely. Peter slipped away before the watcher could spot his exact corner. When he reached a rooftop, he found 3 small light marks on a vent pipe. 3 stars. Peter's chest loosened a fraction, not because he trusted everything, but because one person in this world was trying to be honest. He followed the sign path, stars on pipes, stars on the backs of street signs, stars scratched into a brick corner, until he reached an old apartment building with a half-broken roof access door. Starlight waited inside, arms crossed, face tense. Peter stepped in and shut the door behind him. She didn't waste time. They're going to offer you a contract, she said. Today. Peter tilted his head. How do you know? Because I heard it, she snapped. Then she took a breath. Because I'm inside. And because they think you're valuable. I'm not for sale, Peter said. Starlight's laugh was short and bitter. Tell them that, she said. See what happens. Peter moved to a dusty window and looked down at the street. Vought posters were everywhere. His own masked face was already showing up on some, framed like a new toy they had discovered. He felt sick. I need information, Peter said. Starlight's eyes narrowed. About what? About how I got here, he said, and how to get back. Starlight hesitated. Vought will pretend they can help, she said, but they'll really try to study you. Peter nodded. Yeah, he said. That's what I'm afraid of. He paused. Also, I'm running out of web fluid. Starlight blinked. You're... what? Peter held up his wrists. These don't refill themselves, he said. I'm not a natural spider. It's a whole thing. Long story? Science. For the first time, Starlight's mouth twitched like she almost smiled. Of course it's science, she muttered. Peter pointed down at the street. I need a lab, he said. Or at least a place with chemicals. And I need to know what Vought knows about that rip. Starlight's face tightened again. If you go near Vought Tower, they'll trap you. I know, Peter said. But they're the only lead I have. Starlight stared at him like she was weighing a decision that could get her killed. Then she said, There's another group looking for you. Peter's voice went quiet. You said that before. They're called the Boys, she said. They're not heroes. But they fight Vought. They hate soups. They might hate you. Peter's spider sense buzzed like a small warning bell. Where are they? He asked. Starlight swallowed. I don't know exactly, she admitted. But if they want you, they'll find you. Peter didn't like that sentence at all. And then his spider sense screamed. Not a soft hum, a full alarm. Peter moved without thinking, grabbing Starlight by the wrist and pulling her back behind a concrete wall. A second later, a dart thudded into the wooden doorframe where her head had been. Starlight gasped. What? Shh, Peter whispered. Footsteps. Slow. Quiet. Trained. Peter leaned around the wall just enough to see. 4 people in dark clothes moved through the doorway like they owned the place. One was broad and steady. One was nervous and trying not to be. One was wiry with sharp eyes. One had a stare like a blade. And then there was the man in front. Billy Butcher. Peter didn't know his name yet. But he knew the type. The kind of person who had decided the world didn't deserve mercy. The man's gaze landed on Peter. Hello, Spider, the man said, voice low and cold. Been meaning to have a chat. Peter stepped out from behind the wall, hands open. He kept his body loose. Ready. But not threatening. You shoot darts at people you want to chat with? Peter asked. The nervous one, Huey, looked uncomfortable. It's sort of our thing, he said weakly. Starlight's light flickered in her palms. Back off, she warned. Butcher didn't even look at her. He stared at Peter like he was measuring how hard he'd be to break. You're not Vought, Butcher said. That's obvious. Peter nodded once. Correct. But you're a soup, Butcher said. Peter hesitated. The word meant something here. Something ugly. I have powers, Peter said carefully. I don't know what soup means in your world. Butcher snorted. It means you're a walking problem, he said. The broad man, MM, stepped forward slightly. Calm, but ready. We're not here to start a war, he said. We're here to understand what you are. Peter's spider sense buzzed again. Not danger. Tension. The wiry one, Frenchie, tilted his head, eyes bright. The webbing, he said softly. It is not like the Vought toys. It is your own. Peter glanced at him. My own, he confirmed. Huey's eyes flicked to Starlight. Wait, he said. You know her? Starlight stiffened. Peter felt the situation tighten like a rope. Butcher's eyes narrowed. Of course, he said. The shining mascot is here too. Lovely. Starlight's voice snapped. If you touch him, Homelander will… Butcher cut her off. Homelander will do what Homelander does, he said. We've lived through it. You have too. Butcher stepped closer to Peter, invading space on purpose. I'll be clear, Butcher said. If you're here to play hero, and then join the Seven, I'll put you down. Huey flinched. MM's jaw tightened. Peter stared at Butcher through the mask. Put me down, how? Peter asked calmly. Butcher's smile was ugly. However it takes. Peter's voice turned hard. No, he said. We're not doing this. Butcher's hand moved fast toward his pocket. Peter's spider sense screamed. Peter flicked his wrist. Webbing snapped out and stuck Butcher's hand to his own thigh mid-draw. Butcher froze, shocked for half a second. Peter didn't hit him. He just held position and said, I don't want to fight you. Butcher yanked hard. The web held. You just did. Butcher growled. No, Peter said. I stopped you from doing something stupid. Butcher's eyes burned. You don't get to judge me. Peter's chest rose and fell. He thought about the plaza, the wild man's fear, Homelander's smile. I've seen people with power do awful things, Peter said, and I've seen people justify it because they think they're right. He looked directly at Butcher. I'm not killing anyone. Not for you. Not for Vought. Not for anybody. Silence fell. Huey swallowed. He sounds like… He started, then stopped, like he didn't know who to compare Peter to in a world where heroes were fake. MM's eyes stayed on Peter. Steady. If you're not with Vought, MM said, then why are you here? Peter's voice softened a notch. I didn't choose to come here, he said. Something pulled me through. I'm trying to get home. And until I do, I'm going to help people. Butcher laughed once, not happy. Help people, he repeated. In this city. Peter didn't blink. Yeah, he said. In this city. Frenchie stepped closer, curiosity winning. If you wish to go home, he said, you will need machines, data, chemicals. This world has those things. Peter glanced at Starlight. Starlight's face was tight, but she nodded slightly, like she had already reached the same conclusion. Butcher jerked his stuck hand again and ripped the web free with brute anger. He rubbed his wrist, eyes locked on Peter. You really think you can swing around and fix this place? He said. Peter's answer was simple. I can try, he said. Butcher's voice dropped. Trying gets people killed. Peter's spider sense didn't scream, but Peter felt the truth in the words. Trying had gotten people killed before. He swallowed. Then we do it smarter, Peter said. Butcher stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned slightly toward MM. We're leaving, he said. This one's either a saint or an idiot. Huey opened his mouth, then shut it again. Butcher paused at the doorway and looked back at Peter. If you side with Vought, he said, I won't hesitate next time. Peter didn't flinch. If you try to murder people, Peter said, I won't hesitate either. Butcher's eyes flashed. Then he walked out. The boys vanished down the stairs. Starlight let out a breath like she'd been holding it for a full minute. Peter stayed still, listening until the footsteps faded. Then he said quietly, I really don't like making enemies. Starlight's laugh was a sharp exhale. Wrong universe, she said. Peter leaned against the wall, tired. Yeah, he agreed. I noticed. He looked at the dart stuck in the doorframe. This is going to be a long week, he added. The next wave didn't come with fists. It came with stories. A new clip hit the feeds. Grainy. Cropped. It showed SpiderMan yanking down a camera tower at the plaza. It cut off right before it showed the handlers behind the stage. The caption read, "Web Vigilante Attacks Press. Why is he hiding?" Then another story ran, "Is SpiderMan an illegal soup? Vought investigates." Peter watched it from a rooftop ledge as the city rushed below. He felt his jaw tighten. "Illegal," he muttered. "I'm illegal now." His web shooter clicked again, like it wanted to remind him to panic. He didn't panic. He thought, if Vought could twist video, then video wasn't enough. He needed proof that couldn't be waved away. He needed files, names, dates, plans. He needed the kind of evidence that didn't care about smiling anchors. And he needed it fast, before Homelander decided to stop playing nice. His spider sense buzzed. He turned his head and saw a drone on the next building. This time, he didn't hide. He fired a web and yanked the drone straight into his hand. The drone buzzed and fought. Peter held it gently, like a trapped bird. Then he twisted a small panel open and stared at the inside. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's see whose toy you are." He didn't have a laptop. He didn't have time. So he did what he always did. He used the simplest tools. He crushed the drone's camera, but left the memory chip intact. He pocketed it. Then he webbed the drone's body to the rooftop, where it would be found. A message, not a threat, a warning that he was not easy prey. Peter swung away, mind already racing toward the next step. Find a computer. Find a lab. Find a crack in Vaught's wall. And if the boys wanted to kill him for being a soup, he'd have to manage that too. He sighed into his mask. "Normal problems," he muttered. "I miss normal problems." The crack appeared in a place Peter didn't expect. A hospital. Not a Vought building. Not a fancy tower. Just a public place full of exhausted nurses and families, and people trying to keep breathing. Peter had swung past and heard a crash inside. His spider sense had flared. He went in through an upper window. A man with a gun had taken a nurse hostage, screaming about money. Peter ended it in 2 seconds. A web to the gun. A web to the man's feet. A gentle shove into a wall. No broken bones. No drama. The nurse stared at Peter like he was a ghost. "You're SpiderMan," she whispered. Peter's chest tightened. "Yeah," he said softly. "Are you okay?" She nodded fast, tears in her eyes. Then she said the sentence that hit him hardest. "They said you were dangerous," she said. "But you didn't even hurt him." Peter stared at her. This was what Vought could not fully control. A real person seeing a real act. Peter lowered his voice. "Tell the truth," he said, "even if they get loud." He slipped back out the window before anyone could thank him on camera. On the roof, his spider sense buzzed again. Starlight. He followed the 3-star trail that night. This time, she met him with a small envelope. "What's this?" Peter asked. "A chip," she said. "From an internal camera system. It's risky, but it might help you." Peter's eyes widened under the mask. "Why would you—" "Because I'm tired," she said, voice sharp with emotion. "I'm tired of them controlling everything. I'm tired of pretending." Peter held the envelope carefully, like it was fragile. "What's on it?" he asked. Starlight looked away. "Schedules," she said. "Access routes. A location they don't want anyone to know about." Peter's spider sense prickled. "A lab." Starlight nodded once. "A deep lab," she said. "If you want answers about how you got here, start there." Peter's throat tightened. He thought of the rip in the sky. He thought of the white light. He thought of the feeling of being pulled like a toy. He nodded. "Okay," he said. Starlight's eyes searched his mask. "What are you going to do?" Peter's voice was simple. "What I always do," he said. "Break in. Get proof. Save people if there are people to save. Starlight flinched at the casual way he said, "Break in," like it was just another Tuesday. Then she said, "Be careful. They have someone down there?" Peter tilted his head. "Who?" Starlight's mouth tightened. "The one who doesn't talk," she said. "The one they send when they want clean." Peter felt a cold pinch in his gut. "The silent guy," he repeated. Starlight nodded. "Black Noir." Peter stared out at the city lights. He didn't know Noir, but he knew the type. Quiet meant trained. Quiet meant deadly. Peter slipped the envelope into his suit carefully. Then he looked at Starlight and said, "If this goes bad, they'll blame you." Starlight's face hardened. "They already blame me for breathing wrong," she said. Peter couldn't help it. A small laugh escaped him. Then his face turned serious again. "This isn't going to be just punching," he said. "This is going to be a war with cameras and lies." Starlight nodded. "Welcome to my life." Peter looked down at his web shooters. Click. He sighed. "Also, I'm still going to run out of web fluid," he said. Starlight stared at him, then shook her head like she couldn't believe him. "You're planning a break-in," she said, "and you're worried about web juice." "It's a real concern," Peter said defensively. Starlight's mouth twitched again. For one small second, the world felt less heavy. Then the moment passed. Peter turned toward the dark part of the city where the lab would be, and he made his pivot, clear and solid in his mind. If Vogt wanted to control the story, he would take their story away. He would find the truth, and he would put it where everyone could see it. The building looked boring from the outside. That was the point. No giant Vogt logo, no bright lights, no cheering crowd. Just a gray block with a few small windows and a guarded gate. Peter watched from a rooftop across the street, crouched behind a billboard. His eyes tracked patterns. 2 guards at the front gate, 1 at the side door. A camera sweep every 12 seconds on the rear corner. A drone looped overhead on a slow circle. Inside, faint vibrations of machines. Heavy power draw. A lab. Peter tapped his web, shooter lightly. He didn't have room for mistakes. He pulled out the memory chip from the drone he'd captured earlier, and the envelope Starlight had given him. He didn't have a computer. So he did what he could. He listened. He moved closer. He stuck to the building wall where the cameras couldn't see. He crawled along the underside of a ledge and reached a maintenance vent. His spider sense gave him a soft warning. Motion sensor. Peter pulled a small piece of duct tape from his pocket. He didn't know why he had it. He always had random stuff. It was a SpiderMan thing. He stuck the tape over the sensor. The sensor read nothing. Peter eased the vent open and slipped inside. The air smelled clean and cold, like a place that didn't want dirt or humanity. He crawled through the vent shaft silently until he reached a grate that looked down into a hallway. Below, men in lab coats walked fast. Security moved with guns held ready. Peter waited. Then he saw a sign on a door. Research Wing C Materials. Peter's heart kicked. Materials. Webbing. Anomaly. He pushed the grate open and dropped silently into the hallway. He moved like a shadow, sticking to the ceiling corners when footsteps came, dropping behind carts when doors opened. His spider sense helped, but he didn't rely on it alone. He watched reflections in glass. He listened for shoe squeaks. He felt vibrations through the floor. He reached the materials door and paused. A keypad. Peter sighed. "Right," he whispered. "Keypads. I hate keypads." He listened through the door. A single heartbeat inside. Slow, steady. Not a scientist. A guard. Peter's spider sense buzzed. He slid a thin web strand under the door crack and let it creep along the floor like a living line. It touched the guard's boot. Peter flicked his wrist. The web snapped tight and yanked the guard off his feet. Before the guard could shout, Peter opened the door, shot a web to the guard's mouth, and pinned him gently to the wall in a sitting position. "Sorry," Peter whispered. "You seem like you have dental benefits. Let's keep it that way." The guard's eyes were wide. He struggled. Peter didn't waste time. He moved into the lab, rows of shelves, steel tables, bright lights, and in the center, under a glass case, strands of white webbing laid out like a trophy. Peter's stomach dropped. They had his web. He stepped closer and saw labels. Sample: unknown origin, adhesive. Tensile tests, extreme. Breakdown attempts, failed. Peter's jaw tightened. He was not a person to them. He was a resource. He moved past the case and found another table. There were photos, blurry frames of him swinging, notes about his movement, and then a folder with a word that made his blood run colder. Anomaly event, sky rip. Peter grabbed it and flipped pages fast. Charts, camera timestamps, satellite angles, a diagram of the rip, drawn like a wound in the air. They had tracked it. They had studied it. And if they studied it, they might be able to make it happen again. Peter's hands shook just a little. Not fear. Anger. He forced himself to breathe. "Okay," he whispered. "Data. Copy. Proof." He looked around for a terminal. He found one near the back wall, screen dark, keyboard clean. Peter moved toward it, and then his spider sense exploded. Peter threw himself sideways. A black blade sliced through the air where his neck had been. Peter hit the floor, rolled, and sprang up into a crouch. Black Noir stood in the doorway behind him. Noir didn't speak. He didn't threaten. He just stepped forward, silent and smooth, like a nightmare that had learned how to walk. Peter's heart hammered. He had fought trained people. He had fought monsters. He had fought aliens. But there was something about a human-shaped killer who made no sound. Peter lifted his hand slightly. "Okay," he said, voice steady. "So you're the clean guy." Noir tilted his head like he was listening. Then he lunged. Noir moved fast, not super speed, but fast enough that normal people would already be dead. Peter's spider sense guided him like a rope, pulling him out of danger. He leaned back as a knife flashed past his chest. He pivoted as a second blade cut for his leg. Peter didn't punch. He webbed. A strand snapped onto Noir's wrist. Peter yanked, trying to pull the knife away. Noir twisted with it, using the pull to spin and bring his elbow toward Peter's jaw. Peter ducked and felt the elbow brush the top of his mask. Noir followed with a knee strike. Peter caught the knee with both hands and shoved, sending Noir sliding backward across the lab floor. Noir hit a table, flipped it, and landed on his feet. Peter's eyes widened under the mask. "Okay," Peter muttered. "You're good." Noir didn't react. He threw a small object. Peter's spider sense screamed and he jumped. The object hit the floor and burst into a thick gray foam. The foam spread fast, like spilled glue. Peter landed on a shelf above it. The foam bubbled and hissed where it touched a strand of webbing on the wall. Web solvent. Peter's stomach dropped. "They planned for me," he whispered. Noir lunged again, leaping onto a table, then up toward Peter's perch. Peter flipped over Noir, stuck to the ceiling for a second, and fired webbing down onto Noir's shoulders. Noir cut the web instantly. Peter fired again, wider, aiming for the floor around Noir's feet. Noir's boots stuck for a half-second. That half-second was all Peter needed. Peter kicked off the ceiling, swung past Noir, and grabbed the anomaly folder with his free hand. Noir slashed at Peter's arm. Peter twisted, but the blade still cut his suit fabric. A thin line of pain stung his forearm. Peter hissed, but he didn't slow. He vaulted out of the lab, slamming the door behind him. Noir hit the door a second later. The handle shook. Peter sprinted down the hallway, feet barely touching the ground. Alarms didn't blare yet. That meant Noir wasn't calling it in. Noir wanted this quiet. Peter didn't like that. He turned a corner and nearly collided with something else. A second team in dark clothes, moving in the opposite direction. Butcher. Frenchie. Huey. Peter skidded to a stop, eyes wide. "You?" Huey squeaked. Butcher's eyes narrowed. "Told you we'd find you," he said. Peter's spider sense buzzed again, warning from behind. Noir was coming. "We don't have time," Peter snapped. "There's an assassin behind me, and you're in his hallway." Butcher's smile was sharp. "Good," he said. "We brought gifts." Frenchie lifted a small bag of devices, grinning like he was proud of it. MM's eyes flicked past Peter. He saw the danger in Peter's posture. He didn't question it. "Move," MM ordered. They ran. The corridor ahead split into two directions. Butcher grabbed Peter's arm. "Lab access is this way," he said. Peter yanked free. Not angry, urgent. "I'm already in it," he said. "They have my webbing, and they have data on the Skyrip." Butcher's eyes sharpened. "Skyrip?" Peter shoved the folder into Huey's hands. "Keep that safe," he said. "If I get grabbed, don't let them take it back." Huey stared at the folder like it was radioactive. "Me? Why me?" "Because you look like the only one here who doesn't enjoy murder," Peter said. Butcher barked a laugh. Huey looked offended and terrified at the same time. A door slammed behind them. Noir stepped into view at the far end of the hallway, walking toward them like time didn't matter. Frenchie whispered, "Mon Dieu." Butcher lifted a detonator. Peter's spider sense screamed at the shape of Butcher's plan. "You're not blowing this place with people inside," Peter snapped. Butcher's eyes flashed. "This place makes people into monsters," he growled. "It deserves to burn." "And the lab techs?" Peter shot back. "The janitor? The guards who don't even know what's in the files? You're going to kill them too?" Butcher's jaw clenched. Noir kept walking. MM stepped between them. "Argue later," he said. "We survive first." Peter made a fast choice. He fired webbing down the hallway, not at Noir, but at the ceiling lights and sprinkler pipes. He yanked. The lights tore loose. Sprinklers burst. Water sprayed hard, flooding the corridor. Noir didn't stop, but his footing changed. Peter fired more webbing, making a web lattice across the wet floor. Noir's boots hit the web. This time, the water made the solvent foam less useful. The web held longer. Noir cut and fought, but it slowed him. "Go!" Peter shouted. They sprinted through a side door into a wider room full of storage crates and metal cages. Huey clutched the folder to his chest like a lifeline. Frenchie shoved a crate over, blocking the door. MM pressed his ear to it. "He'll get through," he said. Peter looked around and saw a row of lockers and lab coats. An idea snapped into place. "Frenchie," Peter said quickly, "do you have anything with a camera? Anything that can send a file out fast?" Frenchie blinked. "You want a live stream?" "I want proof," Peter said. "Real proof," Butcher scoffed. "Proof won't stop him." "It might," Peter said. "It might crack the mask." The door rattled. Noir was cutting through. MM moved toward a second exit. "This way," he said. Peter's mind raced. He couldn't carry everything. He couldn't save every file. Not with Noir on them and Vought about to lock down. He needed one big hit. One thing that mattered. He spotted a terminal on the far wall, blinking green. Peter ran to it, fingers moving fast. The screen asked for credentials. Peter groaned. "Still hate keypads," he muttered. He ripped the panel off the side of the terminal and found a port. He jammed the drone memory chip in. It didn't fit. He yanked it out, cursed, then used a thin web strand to hold it in place. The terminal sparked. Then the screen flickered. Peter's eyes widened. He didn't fully understand why it worked, but he didn't care. He clicked through menus fast, using instinct, pattern, and luck. He found a folder titled Anomaly Event. He found another folder titled Subject, Web Hero. He found a third folder that made his stomach twist. Human Trials, V. Peter's hands went cold. He didn't open that one. Not now. Not with people behind him. Butcher stepped close, eyes on the screen. That, he said, voice low, is what I want burned. Peter's jaw tightened. Not with people inside, he repeated. Noir slammed into the door again. Metal groaned. Peter made his choice. He copied the anomaly data first, then the subject data. Then he grabbed one set of internal messages that showed handlers planning the Plaza event. He sent it to the only contact line Starlight had given him, an anonymous drop she said could reach someone outside Vought if luck held. Then he wiped the terminal. Not perfectly, but enough to slow them. He turned and ran. As they burst out into a service tunnel, the building finally woke up. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. A voice on speakers called for lockdown. Huey flinched at every sound. "Where are we going?" he gasped. Peter didn't slow. "Out," he said. "Then up." They hit a stairwell. MM took point. Butcher stayed near the back, eyes hungry like he wanted to turn around and blow something up. Peter saw it. Peter didn't have time to wrestle morals forever. So he did the only thing he could do. He focused on the next 10 seconds. They burst onto the roof. Cold air hit their faces. The city spread out below, bright and cruel. A drone swarm lifted from the far side of the building like a cloud of metal insects. Huey stared. That's a lot of drones. Peter fired webbing at a rooftop antenna and yanked it down into the drone swarm. The antenna whipped through, smashing several drones. Sparks rained. The drones adjusted and kept coming. Frenchie shouted, "They are angry bees!" Peter shot webbing in wide arcs, tangling drones together. 2 drones crashed into a third. A fourth spun out and fell, smoking. MM yelled, "Move!" They ran across the roof toward the far edge. Peter's spider sense screamed again. A new danger? A shadow dropped from above. Homelander. He didn't land with a smile this time. He landed like a judge arriving late to court. His eyes locked onto Peter first, then flicked to Butcher and the others. His mouth curled. "Well," Homelander said softly, "look what I found." Butcher raised his weapon without hesitation. Homelander didn't even glance at it. Peter stepped forward, putting himself between Homelander and the others. "Leave them out of this," Peter said. Homelander's eyes gleamed. "Out of this?" he repeated. "They broke into my house." Peter's voice stayed steady. "Your house is full of stolen people," he said. Homelander's smile vanished. For a second, the wind seemed to stop. Homelander moved, fast, not toward Peter, toward Huey. Peter's spider sense screamed, and his body reacted before his thoughts did. He shot a web to Huey's chest and yanked him backward, out of Homelander's path. Homelander's hand sliced through empty air. Homelander's eyes flashed with surprise, then anger. Peter didn't wait. He fired webbing at the roof edge and snapped it around Homelander's ankle. Not to hold him. It wouldn't. But to make him react. Homelander tore it away in a blink, but that blink gave Peter time to act. "Jump!" Peter shouted at the boys. MM didn't ask questions. He grabbed Huey and ran to the edge. Frenchie followed. Butcher hesitated, eyes locked on Homelander, like he wanted to die trying. Peter grabbed Butcher's coat and yanked him toward the edge. Butcher snarled, "Don't touch! Do you want to win later or lose now?" Peter snapped. Butcher's eyes burned. Then MM tackled him from the side and dragged him off the roof. They fell. Peter fired a web line down after them, catching their weight and swinging them toward a lower rooftop. Huey screamed the whole way. Peter didn't have time to enjoy that they weren't dead, because Homelander was still there. And Homelander was looking at Peter like Peter had just broken a toy. "You protect them," Homelander said, voice low. "Why?" Peter swallowed. "Because they're people," he said. Homelander's eyes narrowed. "So are ants," he whispered. Peter's spider sense screamed. Heat vision. Peter flipped sideways. The beam sliced the roof where he'd been standing, cutting concrete like butter. Peter fired webbing at a rooftop water tower and swung around it, using it as a shield. The heat vision carved into the metal and made steam explode outward. Peter used the steam cloud to vanish for half a second. He didn't try to hit Homelander hard. He tried to escape. He swung off the roof edge, dropped low, then snapped upward between buildings, staying close to walls to break line of sight. Homelander followed from above, faster and cleaner. Peter couldn't outrun him forever. So he did the only thing that could change the fight. He changed the rules. Peter swung toward a crowded street, then veered away at the last second, forcing Homelander to choose between chasing him and not crashing into a packed area where phones would catch the wrong kind of hero. Homelander slowed, not because he cared, because cameras were everywhere. Peter didn't stop. He swung hard into the night and disappeared into tight alleys and narrow gaps where Homelander couldn't fly in a straight line without smashing buildings. When Peter finally landed, breathing hard, his forearm still stinging from Noir's blade, he knew one thing clearly. Vought had his webbing. Vought had the RIP data. And Homelander had decided SpiderMan wasn't a guest. He was an insult. Peter pressed his back to a brick wall and listened to the distant sirens. He felt the city's eyes on him, even when he couldn't see them. Then he whispered, "Okay, no more polite." He pulled the anomaly folder copies from his suit. He didn't have everything, but he had enough. And now he had a new mission, tied to the only personal goal that made sense. Get home. To do that, he needed the RIP. To get the RIP, he needed to break Vought's grip on the truth. And to do that, he needed to hit them where they lived. Not with fists, with exposure, and with a plan that didn't rely on anyone else being good. Because in this world, goodness was rare. But Peter Parker was stubborn, so he started building anyway. 2 weeks later, Peter had a map in his head that didn't exist on any phone. It was a map of safe rooftops, broken stairwells, quiet water towers, and blind spots between camera angles. It was a map built from trial and error, and from a spider sense that never fully relaxed. He had also built something else, not a portal. Not yet. But a rough little ping device the size of a lunchbox, made from stolen lab parts, a cracked phone, and a coil he rewound by hand in an abandoned workshop. It was ugly. It was heavy. It was barely stable. It was his best guess at finding the same kind of RIP that had dragged him here. He tested it at night, on rooftops, with his mask pushed up just long enough to see the flickering numbers on the screen. Most nights the device did nothing. Some nights it clicked once, like it had heard something far away and didn't like it. Peter kept those nights in his chest like a secret hope. His routine became simple. Sleep in short bursts, patrol until sunrise, fix what he could, avoid what he couldn't, keep web fluid from running out. That last part was its own nightmare. He had found a small high school chemistry room with a broken window and a lock that didn't latch. He used it like a nest. He cleaned the glass. He taped cardboard over the window from the inside. He drew a little spider symbol on the whiteboard so he could find the room fast if he was dizzy or hurt. He mixed batches there with stolen bottles that still had labels half torn off. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it turned into sticky gray sludge and ruined a whole cartridge. When that happened, Peter would stare at the mess and whisper, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Stark," even though Mr. Stark wasn't here and might not exist in this world at all. He laughed at his own joke once. It sounded strange in an empty classroom. The rest of the world didn't laugh. Vought's story of him changed every day. One day he was a new hero candidate. The next day he was a dangerous illegal soup. Then he was a violent vigilante who attacked press. Then Vought tried a softer one. A smiling anchor on a morning show said, "Maybe he's confused. Maybe he needs guidance. Maybe he needs a family." Peter watched the clip from the corner of a rooftop and muttered, "I'm not joining your weird cape cult." Under the jokes, the pressure grew. Vought teams swept blocks with drones. Black SUVs parked near rooftops Peter liked. Certain alleys got random police patrols at the exact time he usually passed through. And every few nights, Peter felt it. A quiet shape in the wrong place. A silent shadow on a roofline. Black Noir wasn't chasing him in loud, obvious ways anymore. Noir was waiting. Peter started leaving decoys. Web shapes on walls that looked like he had landed there. Web lines that led to empty roofs. Fake sounds made with dangling metal and sticky web anchors. It kept him alive. It also meant he was spending more web fluid on tricks than on rescues. That made him angry. One night, after stopping a house fire and carrying 3 kids down a smoke-filled stairwell, Peter crouched on a nearby roof and looked at the city with tired eyes behind his mask. A helicopter passed with a Vought logo on its side. Peter's spider sense buzzed lightly. A familiar set of 3 small light marks glowed on a vent pipe nearby. 3 stars. Peter followed them across rooftops to a dark church with a side entrance that didn't creak. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old wood. A few candles were lit, small and steady. Starlight sat on a bench in plain clothes, hood up. She looked at Peter like she was counting his bruises. "You're losing weight," she said. Peter tried for humor. "It's the new diet," he said. "It's called being hunted by a flying maniac. Very popular. Very unhealthy." Starlight didn't smile. Peter's joke faded. "Okay," he said softly. "Yeah, I'm tired." Starlight leaned forward, elbows on knees. "They're changing tactics," she said. "They're not just trying to catch you." Peter tilted his head. "What, like, emotionally destroy me?" Starlight's eyes flicked up. "Yes," she said. "Exactly that." Peter's stomach tightened. Starlight pulled a small folded card from her pocket and slid it along the bench toward him. "No names," she said. "No phones. It's a location and a time. Tomorrow night." Peter didn't touch it yet. "What is it?" "A meeting," Starlight said. "They want to talk, not the loud way." Peter's spider sense gave a tiny pulse of warning. "Who is they?" he asked, though he already had a guess. Starlight's voice went flat. "Stan Edgar," she said. Peter finally picked up the card and read it. A parking garage downtown. Midnight. Level 3. "Let me guess," Peter said. "If I don't show up, I'm the villain again." Starlight nodded once. "And if you do show up, it's a trap," she said. "But it's also a chance to hear what they know." Peter held the card between 2 fingers. He thought about the anomaly folder. He thought about the ping device clicking in the dark. He thought about going home. "I'll go," Peter said. Starlight's eyes widened a fraction. "Peter." He held up a hand. "I'll go smart," he said. "I'll go with exits. I'll go with web lines ready. I'll go with a plan." Starlight's jaw tightened. "If Homelander shows up, I leave," Peter said. "Immediately. No hero speech. Just leave." Starlight stared at him. "Good," she said, "because he's been asking about you like you're a stain he can't scrub out." Peter swallowed. Then he tapped his wrist. "Also," he said, "if you have access to basic lab stuff, like real solvents, real supplies." Starlight cut him off, eyes half-lidded. "You're still doing the web fluid thing," she said. Peter looked a little defensive. "It matters," he said. "It's kind of my whole Thing. Starlight shook her head, but this time her mouth twitched. I'll see what I can do, she said. Peter breathed out. Thank you, he said, and meant it. As he turned to leave, Starlight said quietly, If this goes wrong, don't be a martyr. Peter paused. That's not my style, he said. It was a lie, but it was also a promise he wanted to keep. Stan Edgar waited in the parking garage like he was waiting for a taxi. 2 cars stood behind him, engines off. No visible guards, no drones, just still air and concrete. A single light flickered above, because places like this always had one flickering light. SpiderMan arrived without footsteps. One moment the space was empty. The next, the red and blue figure hung upside down from a beam, looking at Stan like a question mark that had learned to fight. Stan didn't react. You're punctual, Stan said. Peter's voice came from behind the mask. I'm cautious, he corrected. Stan nodded as if that was reasonable. Good, he said. Caution keeps assets alive. Peter's head tilted. You just called me an asset, he said. Stan's expression didn't change. You are, he said simply. To many people. Peter dropped to the ground in a quiet crouch, then stood. He kept distance. He kept angles. Stan took 1 step forward, hands open, calm. I'll be direct, he said. We know you are not a Compound V subject. Peter's spider sense buzzed slightly. Okay, Peter said. Congrats, Stan continued. We have footage of the anomaly that brought you here, he said. We have records of its signature. We have teams studying it. Peter's chest tightened. Can you send me back? He asked, too fast. Stan watched him for a long moment. Not yet, he said. But in time? Possibly. Peter's voice turned hard. At what cost? He asked. Stan didn't blink. At the cost of cooperation, he said. We provide you resources, protection, equipment, a place to work. In return, you become a VOD hero. Peter stared at him. He imagined it. A lab, real chemicals, a clean room to build the ping device, maybe a portal machine, maybe a way home. Then he imagined the plaza again, the staged chaos, the fear in the wild man's eyes, the handlers behind the stage. Peter's jaw clenched. No, he said. Stan's eyebrows rose a fraction. Think carefully, he said. You're hunted. You're alone. You're running out of whatever that web fluid is. Peter froze for half a second. Then he narrowed his eyes behind the mask. You've been watching more closely than your commercials, he said. Stan's voice stayed smooth. I watch what matters, he said. You have discipline. You have restraint. You have public appeal. You could be the hero this country thinks it wants. Peter's hands curled slightly, not into fists, into something like control. I'm not here to be a symbol for your company, Peter said. I'm here because people need help, and because I want to go home. Stan nodded once. And we can help with both, he said, under our terms. Peter took a slow breath. Then he said the words that had guided him through worse nights than this. People aren't terms, Peter said. For the first time, Stan's calm face looked faintly annoyed. You're moral, Stan said, like it was a diagnosis. Peter shrugged. I try, he said. Stan took a small folder from his coat and held it out. Then take this, he said, a gesture. Peter didn't move. Stan opened the folder and slid a photo toward him. It was the rip in the sky, a satellite view. Sharp, clean, real. Under it, a second page, a list of times and places, small spikes of energy, not as big as the first rip, but similar. Peter's heart jumped. Those are echoes, Stan said. Rare, unstable, but real. Peter's spider sense didn't scream, but his mind did. This was the first real lead he'd had. He reached out and took the folder. Stan watched him. Work with us, he said again. voice low. And you don't have to steal scraps from high school labs. Peter didn't answer right away. He looked at the list. Then he looked up and said, "You're giving me this because you think it buys me." Stan's eyes stayed steady. "I believe in incentives," he said. Peter's voice turned quiet. "Then here's mine," he said. "You stop staging disasters. You stop hurting people. You stop lying." Stan's mouth was flat. "That's not how the world works," he said. Peter's reply was simple. "Then I'll keep breaking your plans," he said. Stan's gaze sharpened. "And Homelander?" he asked. Peter didn't flinch. "He doesn't scare me into obedience," Peter said. Stan held Peter's stare for a long moment. Then he said, almost gently, "He should." Peter felt a chill. Stan stepped back. "You will reconsider," he said. "Everyone does, eventually." Peter backed away toward the shadows of the garage. "Not everyone," he said. As he slipped up into the beams, he heard Stan speak one last sentence, like a hook tossed after him. "If you want to go home," Stan said, "you'll need a bigger machine than your lunchbox." Peter didn't answer. He just vanished into the night. Butcher found him an hour later, not by luck, by persistence. Peter landed on the roof of an empty office building and unfolded Stan's list under a dim rooftop light. He had just started to circle one of the echo locations when his spider sense buzzed. He looked up. Butcher stood at the far edge of the roof, coat flapping, cigarette unlit between his fingers. Was there too, and Huey and Frenchie. They didn't rush him this time. They looked tired. "You met with the suit," Butcher said. Peter's shoulders tightened. "Starlight told you?" he asked. Huey rubbed the back of his neck. "We sort of follow her too," he admitted. "It's complicated." Starlight was walking a very dangerous line. Peter didn't comment. He just said, "Yes, I met him." Butcher stepped closer. "And?" he asked. Peter held up the folder. "He gave me this," he said. "Echolocations. Places where the rip might happen again." Frenchie's eyes lit up. "A map," he whispered. MM's face stayed cautious. "And what did he want?" MM asked. Peter didn't sugarcoat it. "He wanted me on a leash," Peter said. Butcher grinned. "Of course he did," he said. Peter looked at Butcher. "Why are you here?" he asked. Butcher's grin thinned. "Because you're useful," he said honestly. "And because Homelander is looking for you, like he wants to peel your mask off." Peter's spider sense buzzed at the word mask. Butcher leaned in. "Here's my offer," he said. "We use your little spider tricks to get close. We put Homelander down." Peter's voice went cold. "No," he said. Butcher's eyes flashed. "He's a monster," said. "You saw it?" Peter nodded once. "I did," he said. "And I'm still not killing him." Huey swallowed. "Peter, people die every day because of him," he said, voice small. Peter's gaze softened toward Huey. "I know," he said. "But if I cross that line, I'm not me anymore." Butcher scoffed. "That line won't save anyone," he said. Peter's reply was quiet, but firm. "It saves me," he said. "And it saves the next person I might become." For a second, even the wind felt still. Stepped forward, voice calm. "We're not asking you to be Butcher," he said. "We're asking you to help us stop Vought." Peter looked at the echo list again. A thought clicked. "Stopping Vought," Peter said slowly, "doesn't have to mean killing." Butcher rolled his eyes. "Here we go," he muttered. Peter ignored him. "You want leverage," Peter said. "You want proof that cracks their control." Frenchie nodded quickly. "Yes," he said. "Evidence is a blade, too." Peter tapped the folder. "Then we aim for the next echo," Peter said. "If it's a rip, Vought will show up. If Vought shows up, they'll bring machines. If they bring machines..." He looked up at them. I can steal the right parts, he finished. Huey blinked. You mean, build your way home, he said. Peter nodded. And while we're there, Peter said, we expose them. Not with a rumor. With something they can't easily erase. Butcher's mouth curled. And how do you do that, Spider? He asked. They own the news. Peter's eyes narrowed behind the mask. Then we don't use the news, he said. We use the moment. Mem understood first. A live event, he said. Peter nodded. A crowd, Peter said. Phones. Eyes. Too many angles to fully control. Butcher exhaled smokeless air. You're talking about baiting them, he said. Peter's voice stayed even. They've been baiting me since I landed, he said. I'm just returning the favor. Huey stared at Peter like he was seeing him clearly for the first time. You're really just a kid, Huey blurted. Peter froze. Silence hit the roof. Peter's chest tightened under the suit, but he didn't lash out. He just said quietly, yeah, and let the word hang there like the truth it was. MM's expression shifted. Not pity. Something like respect and worry. Butcher's eyes narrowed, as if that truth annoyed him. Frenchie softened. Then we will be careful, he said. We will not let them break you. Peter looked at the echo list again. One location stood out. A big arena. A planned Vought Hero Unity Night. Cameras, crowds, lights, and, according to Stan's file, an energy spike predicted under the building. Peter felt the shape of the trap. Vought would use the echo, or fake it, or both. Either way, it was their stage. Peter's spider sense buzzed like a warning and a dare. Okay, Peter said. We do it. But one rule. Butcher lifted an eyebrow. You and your rules, he said. Peter looked right at him. No civilians die, Peter said. Not on purpose. Not by collateral. Not by your hand. Butcher's jaw tightened. Stepped in. Agreed, he said firmly. Butcher's eyes flicked to then back to Peter. He didn't smile. Fine, he said. For now. Peter didn't like that. For now. But he took it, because the clock was moving, and the arena night was coming. On the night of Hero Unity Night, the city looked like it was holding its breath. Outside the arena, people wore bright Vought merch and waved flags like this was a holiday. Giant screens showed Homelander smiling, promising safety and strength. Inside, light swept over the crowd in perfect arcs. Music thumped. The air smelled like sugar and sweat and money. Peter watched from the ceiling beams above the main stage, hidden in the dark. Below him, Vaught's show began. A lineup of soups marched out. Applause hit like a wave. Homelander took center stage. He lifted his hands, and the crowd screamed like they had been waiting their whole lives for permission to scream. Peter's spider sense buzzed constantly. Too many threats. Too many moving pieces. He saw Starlight on the stage edge, smiling for cameras, shoulders tight. Her eyes flicked up once. Barely. Not at him directly. Just enough to say, I'm here. Peter saw Black Noir near the backstage entrance, standing still like a statue. Peter's spider sense flared sharper. Noir was looking the wrong way, not watching the crowd, watching the ceiling. Peter went colder. He knows, Peter whispered to himself. On a service catwalk behind the big screens, Frenchie crouched near a cable box, hands moving fast. Stood guard, eyes scanning. Huey hovered close, trembling, holding a small device like it might explode if he breathed wrong. Butcher wasn't there. That alone made Peter nervous. Homelander's speech rolled on. Then, beneath the music, Peter felt it. A vibration. A low, strange hum that didn't match speakers. Peter looked down through a gap in the rigging. Under the stage, deep beneath the arena floor, something pulsed, faintly blue. The echo. Real. Peter's heart kicked. Vought had built around it. and now they were going to use it. His spider sense screamed. A door on the side of the arena blew inward, not from the crowd, from a controlled access tunnel. A group of armed men rushed in, shouting. People screamed and ducked. Cameras spun to catch the chaos. Peter's stomach dropped. This was the staged attack. On the main screen, a headline flashed instantly. Terror attack on Hero Unity Night. Vought responds. Peter's jaw clenched. He saw what Vought wanted. They wanted SpiderMan to show up. They wanted him in the story. They wanted him framed as the cause or the failure. And if he refused to help, they'd paint him as a coward. Peter didn't hesitate. He moved. He dropped from the beams in a silent arc and landed on the edge of the seating area. He fired webs in quick lines, anchoring falling barriers, catching a panicked person before they tumbled down steps, pushing a kid behind a concrete pillar. "Stay down," he called. "Hands over your head. Don't run into the aisle." The armed men fired into the air. The crowd screamed louder. Peter snapped webs onto guns and yanked them away. Not into the crowd. Into the ceiling, where they stuck uselessly. The men shouted and reached for knives. Peter hit them with fast web wraps, pinning arms to torsos, ankles to knees. No broken bones. No time wasted. Then something went wrong. A heavy metal crate rolled out from the same tunnel the attackers came from. The crate slammed onto the floor. The lock popped, and a man stepped out. Not wild like the one at the plaza. Calm, thick shoulders, old eyes, a face that looked like it had spent a lifetime winning fights. Soldier Boy. The crowd didn't recognize him right away, but the supes on stage did. Starlight went stiff. Homelander's smile twitched. Peter's spider sense didn't just scream, it begged. Soldier Boy looked around slowly, like he was tasting the air. Then his gaze landed on Homelander. His mouth curled. "Well, well," he said, voice rough. "You got yourself a kingdom." Homelander's eyes narrowed, but he kept his hero posture for the cameras. Soldier Boy's gaze shifted and landed on Peter, a masked kid in red and blue. Soldier Boy snorted. "And what the hell are you supposed to be?" he asked. Peter took one step forward, keeping distance. "Someone trying to stop people from getting hurt," Peter said. Soldier Boy laughed once. "That's cute," he said. Homelander's voice boomed, smooth and bright. "Everyone stay calm," he said. "Vought has everything under control." Peter hated that sentence, because he could feel the truth under the floor. The blue pulse strengthened. The echo was building. This wasn't just a staged attack. This was a collision of Vought's lies with something real and dangerous. Peter's spider sense locked onto the stage supports. If the echo surged wrong, the floor could crack. The stage could collapse. Thousands could die. Peter's mind went sharp. He needed to reach the machine under the stage. He needed to stop the pulse. But Soldier Boy and Homelander were both here, and both were disasters in different ways. And Noir was moving. Peter saw Noir slip through the crowd with silent speed, heading straight toward Huey's catwalk position. Peter's chest tightened. Huey had the device. The device had the leak package. Everything Peter and Frenchie had stitched together from stolen files. If Noir took it, the truth would die in a pocket. Peter made a choice in a fraction of a second. He fired a web line across the arena and swung toward the catwalk. Noir looked up. Peter's spider sense screamed at the blade coming. Peter twisted mid-swing. A knife slashed through the air where his ribs would have been. Peter landed on the catwalk in a crouch between Noir and Huey. Huey's face was white. "Oh my God," he whispered. Peter didn't look back. "Hey, Huey," he said quickly. "If I get knocked off this thing, run." Huey squeaked. "Run where?" Peter snapped. "Anywhere that isn't here." Noir lunged. Peter met him with speed and angles, not strength. He webbed Noir's forearm, yanked him into a railing, then kicked the railing itself free so it fell between them like a swinging barrier. Noir cut through webbing, but the falling metal forced him to step back. Peter fired webs at the cable box Frenchie had opened. "Frenchie!" Peter called. "Now!" Frenchie slapped the device onto the main cable line. The big screen above the stage flickered. For half a second, Vaught's logo warped. Then it cut. A grainy video appeared. Handlers behind the plaza stage, speaking into earpieces. A case marked with warning symbols. A note on screen with a date. The crowd murmured in confusion. Then the video switched to a list of internal messages. Short lines. Cold lines. Let the incident look real. Control the camera angles. Acceptable casualty range. People started shouting. Security shouted back. Homelander's head snapped toward the screen. His smile vanished. The arena noise shifted from cheering to something messier. Anger. Fear. Questions. Stan Edgar would have hated questions. Homelander hated them more. Homelander's eyes glowed red. Peter's spider sense screamed. Not at the screen, at the crowd. If Homelander fired heat vision and rage, he could slice through hundreds by accident. Peter didn't think. He moved. He shot a web line to a lighting rig above Homelander and yanked hard. The rig dropped like a curtain, metal and thick cable falling between Homelander's eyes and the crowd. Heat vision flashed. It carved the rig instead of people. Sparks exploded. The crowd screamed and ducked. Homelander roared, an actual sound of fury, not a hero line. Peter swung off the catwalk and dropped toward the stage, landing hard. Starlight's eyes met his for a split second. No words, just a shared understanding. This is the moment. Under the stage, the blue pulse surged. The floor trembled. A few cracks spidered across the stage edge. Peter's stomach dropped at the irony. A spider pattern. Before a collapse. Peter ran toward the trapdoor near the side of the stage and ripped it open. Cold blue light poured out. A machine sat beneath, half hidden behind panels. It wasn't a portal. It was a stabilizer. A control rig designed to squeeze the echo into a usable shape. It was also overloaded. Peter dropped into the space under the stage. His spider sense buzzed hard. The air felt wrong, like static, like pressure. He saw a control panel with dials and readouts. He saw cables running into a deep chamber where the blue pulse lived. He didn't have time to decode everything. So he did what he could do. He made the safest choice. He yanked the main power line. The machine screamed in a high electric whine. The blue pulse flared. For one terrifying second, the air under the stage shimmered like it might tear open again. Peter's heart hammered. Then the pulse weakened. Not gone, but calmer. The floor above stopped shaking. Peter breathed out hard. He climbed back up through the trapdoor. The arena had turned into chaos. The big screen still showed Vaught's internal messages, but security teams were trying to cut power. People were filming with their phones, screaming questions, pushing toward exits. Soldier Boy was laughing on the stage like this was the best show he'd seen in years. Homelander hovered above the stage now, eyes glowing, face twisted. He didn't care about saving face anymore. He cared about crushing the thing that had embarrassed him. SpiderMan. Homelander dropped straight down toward Peter like a missile. Peter's spider sense screamed. He jumped sideways, but the impact still hit the stage and shattered wood and metal into a spray. A chunk of debris flew toward the crowd. Peter snapped a web line and yanked it midair, slamming it into the stage instead. Homelander's voice was low enough that only Peter could hear. "You ruined my night," Homelander hissed. Peter's breath came fast. "You ruined your own night," Peter shot back. Homelander grabbed for him. Peter slipped under the grab, using the gap between Homelander's arm and chest. He wasn't faster in raw speed, but his spider sense made him earlier. Peter webbed Homelander's cape to the stage floor. It didn't hold Homelander, but it tugged him off balance for half a second. Half a second was all Peter ever needed. Peter used it to get close to Starlight. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind a chunk of stage wall. Starlight gasped. "What are you doing?" Peter's voice was tight. "If he can't control you, he'll blame you," he said. Starlight's eyes flashed. "He already does!" she snapped. Peter looked at her. Really looked, even with the mask between them. Then he said quietly, "I'm sorry." Starlight blinked, thrown by the sincerity in the middle of a war. Homelander tore free of the cape webbing and hovered higher, scanning. His eyes locked onto Huey in the catwalk area because Huey was still holding the device and still shaking like a leaf. Homelander smiled. It was the worst smile. Peter's spider sense screamed as Homelander moved toward Huey. Peter acted without thought. He fired a web line, not at Homelander, but at Huey's waist, and yanked Huey off the catwalk into a swing arc that carried him toward a lower maintenance platform. Huey screamed like a siren, but he didn't fall to the ground. He lived. Homelander stopped midair, staring at Peter like Peter had just slapped him. "You care about them," Homelander said softly. "That's adorable." Peter's voice went hard. "And you don't," he said. Homelander's eyes glowed brighter. "Let's fix that," Homelander whispered. He shot heat vision again. Peter's spider sense screamed, and he flipped, but the beam clipped the edge of Peter's shoulder, burning through suit fabric and searing skin. Pain flashed sharp and bright. Peter gritted his teeth and kept moving. He couldn't beat Homelander in a straight fight, so he did the only thing he could do. He forced Homelander to keep choosing between cruelty and reputation. Peter swung toward the thickest cluster of cameras, then darted away at the last second, making Homelander's line of fire awkward. He webbed falling debris, saved screaming people near exits, and kept pulling the hero fight into angles where phones could see too much. Starlight blasted security doors open so people could escape faster. MM and Frenchie shoved through crowds to get kids and older people towards safe exits. Somewhere behind the stage, Butcher appeared for one sharp moment with a weapon aimed at Homelander's back. Peter saw him. Peter's spider sense screamed, not because Butcher would miss, but because if Butcher fired now, the chaos would turn into a massacre. Peter made eye contact with Butcher across the mess, and Peter shook his head once, a hard no. Butcher's face twisted with hate. Then he lowered the weapon. Not because he agreed. Because, for this one moment, he listened. Homelander's attention snapped toward Butcher anyway. He had heard the heartbeat change. He always heard those things. He smiled wider. "Butcher," he purred. Butcher vanished back into the smoke and crowd. Homelander looked furious. Peter saw the opening. Not a physical opening. A story opening. The big screen suddenly changed again. Huey, hands shaking, hit the final button on the device. The screen showed one last file dump, a list of payouts, threat letters, a clinic report, a human trial label. Not everything. Not enough to destroy Vought overnight, but enough to make the crowd's fear turn into something with teeth. Security finally cut power to the screen. Too late. Thousands of phones had already recorded it. Homelander hovered above the stage, breathing hard, eyes glowing like rage made them brighter. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Starlight. He looked at SpiderMan. For one terrifying second, Peter thought Homelander might stop caring about cameras forever. Then Soldier Boy laughed again, loud and mocking, and said, "You gonna cry about it?" Homelander's head snapped toward Soldier Boy, and in that snap, Peter saw it. Homelander wasn't alone on the top of the food chain anymore tonight. He had another problem, another ego, another disaster. That tension between two monsters on the same stage was Peter's escape route. Peter grabbed Starlight's hand again. "Come on," he shouted. Starlight yanked free. "I can't leave," she shouted back. "If I leave now—" Peter's voice was urgent. "If you stay and he breaks, you die," he said. Starlight stared at him, eyes wet with fury and fear. Then she turned, blasted a path through backstage chaos, and ran with him into the service tunnels. Behind them, Homelander shouted something that turned into a roar, and Soldier Boy's laugh followed like thunder. Peter and Starlight burst out into the night behind the arena, air cold and sharp. Peter's burned shoulder throbbed. His web shooters felt lighter. Low. Always low. He fired a web line anyway and swung them both up toward the roof. Starlight held on tighter than she wanted to admit. On the roof, they stopped behind a billboard. The city below was screaming. Sirens, shouts, helicopters. Peter's breathing was rough. Starlight turned to him, eyes blazing. "You just turned my life inside out," she said. Peter's voice was quiet. "I'm sorry," he said again, "but people saw something real tonight." Starlight's jaw clenched. "Vought will bury it," she said. Peter shook his head. "Not completely," he said. "Not anymore. Not when it's in 10,000 pockets." Starlight stared at him. Then she looked at his shoulder, at the burned suit, at the way he held himself like he was keeping pain in a box. "You're not okay," she said. Peter tried to shrug and winced. "I've been worse," he said. Starlight's voice softened against her will. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked. "You could have run the first day." Peter didn't answer with a speech. He reached up slowly and pulled his mask halfway off. Not all the way. Just enough to show his mouth and chin and the tired, young human face beneath. Starlight froze. Peter's voice sounded different without the full mask filter. More real. More young. "Because if I don't," he said simply, "then who will?" Starlight's breath caught. Peter pulled the mask back down, fast, like he had revealed too much. He looked away. "I can't stay here forever," he admitted. "I need to find that rip again. I need to build something that can catch it." Starlight swallowed. "And if Vought catches you first?" she asked. Peter's eyes narrowed behind the mask. "Then I don't let them," he said. He pulled Stan's list out, now smudged and creased, and circled a new location. An echo spike. Smaller. "Soon." Peter tapped it. "I'm going to chase this," he said. "And I'm going to do it without their permission." Starlight stared at the paper like it was a door. Then she nodded once. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then you won't do it alone." Peter looked at her. He didn't say thank you. He just let the words sit between them, heavy and true. Down below, the city kept moving. Vought would scream tomorrow. Lawyers would swarm. Headlines would twist. But tonight, for a few minutes, a crack had formed. And through that crack, something like truth had slipped in. Peter turned toward the edge of the roof, pain in his shoulder, and the weight of a whole broken world in his chest. Then he did what he always did. He fired a web line, and he swung back into the dark. A week after the arena, the city felt different in small ways. Not better. Not safe. Not clean. Just different. People still watched Vought News, but now they watched it with narrowed eyes. They paused when anchors said, "Trust us." They argued in comments. They replayed the leaked clips and circled details like they were looking for hidden doors. Vought pushed back hard. They called it fake. They called it edited. They blamed terror groups. They blamed foreign influence. They blamed illegal vigilantes. They never said SpiderMan's name without adding a warning word. Peter didn't care. He was too busy surviving and building. Tonight, he sat in his high school lab nest, alone, in the dim light of a desk lamp he'd stolen from the lost and found. He had his mask off. His hair was a mess. His eyes were tired. His face had a healing burn line near his shoulder where the heat had grazed him. He kept touching it like he couldn't believe it happened. On the table in front of him, his ping device hummed softly. He had improved it with one part stolen from the arena machine, just a small stabilizer coil he'd managed to yank free during the chaos. It wasn't much, but when he connected it, the device stopped clicking randomly. It began to listen. Peter held his breath and watched the numbers drift. A faint spike appeared, then another. Not huge, not a rip, but an echo. Peter's heart lifted and sank at the same time. Hope always came with fear. A soft sound at the broken window made Peter's head snap up. His spider sense didn't scream. 3 small light marks glowed on the outer brick, right near the window. Starlight climbed in carefully, like she had practiced sneaking now. Peter sighed. "You know," he said, "normal people use doors." Starlight looked around the chemistry room and blinked. "Is this your base?" she asked. Peter glanced at the whiteboard with the little spider doodle and the messy formulas. "It's my temporary sadness nest," he said. Starlight huffed a laugh, then stopped when she saw his face. "You're really young," she said softly. Peter's mouth tightened. "Yeah," he said. "That keeps coming up." Starlight stepped closer and looked at the device. "Is that the thing?" she asked. Peter nodded. "It's getting better," he said. "The arena part helped." Starlight's eyes flicked to his shoulder. "And you?" she asked. Peter shrugged carefully. "Also getting better," he lied. Starlight didn't call him on it. She just sat on the edge of a desk, like she needed the weight of something solid under her. "I didn't sleep for 2 days after the arena," she admitted. Peter nodded. "Yeah," he said, quietly. "Same." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the hum of the device and the distant city noise. Then Starlight said, "People are talking," she said. "Not like fans. Like regular people. They're asking questions." Peter's throat tightened. "Good," he said. Starlight looked at him. "You didn't fix everything," she said, almost like a warning. Peter's answer was immediate. "I know," he said. "I just moved it. A little." Starlight nodded. "That matters," she said. Peter glanced at the whiteboard again, at the list he'd written in small letters. Sleep, web fluid, echo spike, people first. He rubbed his eyes. "I miss my world," he admitted, voice low. "Even the bad parts. At least I understood the rules." Starlight's voice softened. "There were rules?" she asked. Peter almost smiled. "Not good rules," he said, "but familiar ones." The device gave a small, clear click. Peter froze. The numbers spiked, sharper than before. Starlight leaned in. "Is that—" Peter's voice went tight with hope. "That's an echo," he said. "Close." Starlight stared at the screen like it was a heartbeat. Peter swallowed. Then he reached over, grabbed his mask and pulled it on, because even hope needed armor in this world. He stood. Starlight stood too. "You're going," she said. Peter nodded. "I have to," he said. Starlight hesitated. "And if it's a trap?" she asked. Peter's eyes were steady behind the mask. "Then I'll do what I always do," he said. "I'll save who I can. I'll dodge what I can't. And I'll keep my line." Starlight looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she said quietly, "Be careful." Peter paused at the window. Then he said one last thing, simple and honest. "Thanks for seeing me," he said. Starlight's throat moved like she swallowed something heavy. "Yeah," she said. "Well, someone should." Peter fired a web line into the night. As he swung out, the city lights reflected in his lenses like 1,000 tiny eyes. He didn't know if he'd get home. He didn't know if Vought would ever fall. He didn't know if Homelander would stop hunting him. But he knew one truth that didn't change from universe to universe. If someone screamed for help, he would move. And somewhere, in the dark between buildings, the device's echo click stayed in his mind like a promise. The rip had brought him here. Now he would chase it, on his terms.